Today's readings are about forgiveness, which is the core of our faith as Christians. And that's not hyperbole. What sets us apart from every other faith is that we believe God came into the world and died on a cross, and that through that act, our sins were forgiven. So while a number of other faiths include forgiveness as an important principle, maybe even a very important principle, no other faith puts it at the center in the way that we do as Christians. The core of our faith is that Christ came to forgive our sins. And somehow, at the same time, I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, we have to admit we struggle greatly with forgiving others. Time and again, when I talk to people about their struggles in life, at the core of their angst for so many people is their inability to forgive somebody who has hurt them deeply. And frankly, I think that's why today's gospel passage is so poignant and so important. In the past, when I've talked about forgiveness, I've tried to focus on the benefits for ourselves in being forgiving of others. I spoke about how frequent it is that the person we're holding a grudge against has long since moved on. They don't even know that we're still holding on to our anger. But we're stuck. We're holding on to the anger. We're holding on to the angst, sometimes even decades later. And so I focused on how much forgiveness is for our own good to let go. The only one we are harming in refusing to forgive is ourselves. But today I want to take a different tack. And that's not because what I've said before is wrong. In fact, I think it's quite true. And if it works for you, please run with it. But I think the problem with that way of addressing the issue is that it's kind of like a drug addict trying to go cold turkey. It may be a bridge too far. We're holding on too hard to that thing to, in an instant, recognize all we're doing is harming ourselves. And so today I'd like to propose another strategy, one that is more of a process than a moment. When we struggle to forgive, 9 times out of 10, it's because we're holding on to anger. We are angry about what has happened, and we feel justified in our anger. And at some level, we feel that if we stop being angry, it will be a acknowledgement that what happened was okay. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to acknowledge that what they did was okay, because oftentimes it was often very wrong. And we feel justified and righteous in holding on to that anger. So I think the key for forgiveness for so many of us is finding a way to change our emotional state from one of anger to a different emotion that helps us transition away. And I'd like to propose that emotion is sadness. Now, you may be a bit surprised. You were probably thinking I was going to give you some positive emotion, joy, hope, love, something like that. Why are we going from one negative emotion to another negative emotion? Because the reality is in these instances, we're not ready to go to something positive. We need something in between. And sadness is an emotion that allows us to hold on to the injustice. It allows us to recognize it wasn't right, but puts us in a frame of mind where we are ready for a journey of healing. So I would say that if you find you're too angry to let it go, find a way to turn that anger into sadness. You can hold on to the pain, at least for a while, but it'll put you on a path to healing. And as proof of this method, I'd like us to look at Christ on the cross. When we look at this great tragedy, are we angry or are we sad? No, of course we're sad. It's a great tragedy, and it pains us to think about it happening, and it double pains us to think about how we are somehow in part responsible for it. And we grieve. But through the crucifixion, we are led to the resurrection. Every year we spend Lent in that moment of sadness and grief. And through it, God leads us to healing and resurrection. And so too when we are struggling to forgive. This is the pathway to letting go. We have to find that very difficult way of saying the anger can be turned around, but it can be turned around by going through sadness. And so I'll summarize again. If you find you have some egregious thing that has happened to you, something that you cannot let go of, and even if you know intellectually that you're only harming yourself, the solution is to take that anger and turn it into great sadness about what happened. And when you do that, you will one day find a path to peace.